Boi. Come. Bashalan. In the peace. Atele. Putting crown on. Byler. Her husband. Boi Kailar. Come bride. This is a beautiful Hebrew wedding song, as if the angels in heaven are calling for the bride who has been waiting for 6,000 years to stand up bravely and put on the crown of glory for the coming King of Heaven.
Hello everyone, welcome to Enoch Talk Show. Today we continue the story of Jacob, part 12. Jacob's roar shook the kings, 100 against hundreds of thousands. The 6-day battle broke through the enemy's courage, and after the war, it was safe for 30 years. In the last few parts we talked about the two nations are in the belly of Rebekah. We also went into detail about the meaning of the names Jacob and Esau. Jacob deceived the birthright with red bean soup. Jacob cheated the blessing. These two cheats are double quotation marks, referring to the eyes of people on earth. We talked about Jacob's double marriage and sister's jealousy. Jacob's scheme and Laban's 10 times altered Jacob's wages. Rachel nearly died from the idol Laban chased after Jacob's family to kill them. Esau was so angry to come to kill Jacob, and the angels stopped this mighty tiger. Shechem raped his beloved, and was destroyed by his own evil. Well, let's talk about Jacob's roar shook the kings, 100 against hundreds of thousands. This story is not described in the Bible, so let's look at the description in the book of Jasher. Book of Jasher, chapter 37. 1 And in the 105th year of the life of Jacob, that is the 9th year of Jacob's dwelling with his children in the land of Canaan, he came from Padan Aram. 2 And in those days Jacob journeyed with his children from Hebron, and they went and returned to the city of Shechem, they and all belonging to them, and they dwelt there, for the children of Jacob obtained good and fat pasture land for their cattle in the city of Shechem, the city of Shechem having then been rebuilt, and there were in it about 300 men and women. 3 And Jacob and his children and all belonging to him dwelt in the part of the field which Jacob had bought from Hamor the father of Shechem, when he came from Padan Aram before Simeon and Levi had smitten the city. 4 And all those kings of the Canaanites and Amorites that surrounded the city of Shechem heard that the sons of Jacob had again come to Shechem and dwelt there. 5 And they said, Shall the sons of Jacob the Hebrew again come to the city and dwell therein, after that they have smitten its inhabitants and driven them out? Shall they now return and also drive out those who are dwelling in the city, or slay them? 6 And all the kings of Canaan again assembled, and they came together to make war with Jacob and his sons. 7 And Jashub king of Tapnach sent also to all his neighboring kings, to Elon king of Gash, and to Ehori king of Shiloh, and to Parathon king of Chazar, and to Suzi king of Sarton, and to Laban king of Bethchorin, and to Shabur king of Othnama, saying, 8 Come up to me and assist me, and let us smite Jacob the Hebrew and his sons, and all belonging to him, for they are again come to Shechem to possess it and to slay its inhabitants as before. 9 And all these kings assembled together and came with all their camps, a people exceedingly plentiful like the sand upon the seashore, and they were all opposite to Tapnach. 10 And Jashub king of Tapnach went forth to them with all his army, and he encamped with them opposite to Tapnach without the city, and all these kings they divided into 7 divisions, being 7 camps against the sons of Jacob. 11 And they sent a declaration to Jacob and his son, saying, Come you all forth to us, that we may have an interview together in the plain, and revenge the cause of the men of Shechem whom you slew in their city, and you will now again return to the city of Shechem and dwell therein, and slay its inhabitants as before. 12 And the sons of Jacob heard this, and their anger was kindled exceedingly at the words of the kings of Canaan, and 10 of the sons of Jacob hastened and rose up, and each of them girt on his weapons of war, and there were 102 of their servants with them equipped in battle array. 13 And all these men, the sons of Jacob with their servants, went toward these kings, and Jacob their father was with them, and they all stood upon the heap of Shechem. 14 And Jacob prayed to the Lord for his sons, and he spread forth his hands to the Lord, and he said, O God, thou art an almighty God, thou art our Father, thou didst form us, and we are the works of thine hands. I pray thee deliver my sons through thy mercy from the hand of their enemies, who are this day coming to fight with them, and save them from their hand, for in thy hand is power and might, to save the few from the many. 15 And give unto my sons, thy servants, strength of heart and might to fight with their enemies, to subdue them, and make their enemies fall before them, and let not my sons and their servants die through the hands of the children of Canaan. 16 But if it seemeth good in thine eyes to take away the lives of my sons and their servants, take them in thy great mercy through the hands of thy ministers, that they may not perish this day by the hands of the kings of the Amorites. 17 And when Jacob ceased praying to the Lord, the earth shook from its place, and the sun darkened, and all these kings were terrified, and a great consternation seized them. 18 And the Lord hearkened to the prayer of Jacob, and the Lord impressed the hearts of all the kings and their hosts with the terror and awe of the sons of Jacob. 19 For the Lord caused them to hear the voice of chariots, and the voice of mighty horses from the sons of Jacob, and the voice of a great army accompanying them. 20 And these kings were seized with great terror at the sons of Jacob, and whilst they were standing in their quarters, behold, the sons of Jacob advanced upon them, with 112 men, with a great and tremendous shouting. 21 And when the kings saw the sons of Jacob advancing toward them, they were still more panic-struck, and they were inclined to retreat from before the sons of Jacob as at first, and not to fight with them. 22 But they did not retreat, saying, It would be a disgrace to us thus twice to retreat from before the Hebrews. 23 And the sons of Jacob came near and advanced against all these kings and their armies, and they saw, and behold, it was a very mighty people, numerous as the sand of the sea. 24 And the sons of Jacob called unto the Lord and said, Help us, O Lord, help us and answer us, for we trust in thee, and let us not die by the hands of these uncircumcised men, who this day have come against us. 25 And the sons of Jacob girt on their weapons of war, and they took in their hands each man his shield and his javelin, and they approached to battle. 26 And Judah, the son of Jacob, ran first before his brethren, and 10 of his servants with him, and he went toward these kings. 27 And Jashub, king of Tapnach, also came forth first with his army before Judah, and Judah saw Jashub and his army coming toward him, and Judah's wrath was kindled, and his anger burned within him, and he approached a battle in which Judah ventured his life. 28 And Jashub and all his army were advancing toward Judah, and he was riding upon a very strong and powerful horse, and Jashub was a very valiant man, and covered with iron and brass from head to foot. 29 And whilst he was upon the horse, he shot arrows with both hands from before and behind, as was his manner in all his battles, and he never missed the place to which he aimed his arrows. 30 And when Jashub came to fight with Judah, and was darting many arrows against Judah, the Lord bound the hand of Jashub, and all the arrows that he shot rebounded upon his own men. 31 And notwithstanding this, Jashub kept advancing toward Judah, to challenge him with the arrows, but the distance between them was about 30 cubits, and when Judah saw Jashub darting forth his arrows against him, he ran to him with his wrath-excited might. 32 And Judah took up a large stone from the ground, and its weight was 60 shekels, and Judah ran toward Jashub, and with the stone struck him on his shield, that Jashub was stunned with the blow, and fell off from his horse to the ground. 33 And the shield burst asunder out of the hand of Jashub, and through the force of the blow sprang to the distance of about 15 cubits, and the shield fell before the second camp. 34 And the kings that came with Jashub saw at a distance the strength of Judah, the son of Jacob, and what he had done to Jashub, and they were terribly afraid of Judah. 35 And they assembled near Jashub's camp, seeing his confusion, and Judah drew his sword and smote 42 men of the camp of Jashub, and the whole of Jashub's camp fled before Judah, and no man stood against him, and they left Jashub and fled from him, and Jashub was still prostrate upon the ground. 36 And Jashub, seeing that all the men of his camp had fled from him, hastened and rose up with terror against Judah, and stood upon his legs opposite Judah. 37 And Jashub had a single combat with Judah, placing shield toward shield, and Jashub's men all fled, for they were greatly afraid of Judah. 38 And Jashub took his spear in his hand to strike Judah upon his head, but Judah had quickly placed his shield to his head against Jashub's spear, so that the shield of Judah received the blow from Jashub's spear, and the shield was split in two. 39 And when Judah saw that his shield was split, he hastily drew his sword and smote Jashub at his ankles, and cut off his feet, that Jashub fell upon the ground, and the spear fell from his hand. 40 And Judah hastily picked up Jashub's spear, with which he severed his head and cast it next to his feet. 41 And when the sons of Jacob saw what Judah had done to Jashub, they all ran into the ranks of the other kings, and the sons of Jacob fought with the army of Jashub, and the armies of all the kings that were there. 42 And the sons of Jacob caused 15,000 of their men to fall, and they smote them as if smiting at gourds, and the rest fled for their lives. 43 And Judah was still standing by the body of Jashub, and stripped Jashub of his coat of mail. 44 And Judah also took off the iron and brass that was about Jashub, and behold, 9 men of the captains of Jashub came along to fight against Judah. 45 And Judah hastened and took up a stone from the ground, and with it smote one of them upon the head, and his skull was fractured, and the body also fell from the horse to the ground. 46 And the 8 captains that remained, seeing the strength of Judah, were greatly afraid, and they fled, and Judah with his 10 men pursued them, and they overtook them and slew them. 47 And the sons of Jacob were still smiting the armies of the kings, and they slew many of them, but those kings daringly kept their stand with their captains, and did not retreat from their places, and they exclaimed against those of their armies that fled from before the sons of Jacob, but none would listen to them, for they were afraid of their lives lest they should die. 48 And all the sons of Jacob, after having smitten the armies of the kings, returned and came before Judah, and Judah was still slaying the 8 captains of Jashub, and stripping off their garments. 49 And Levi saw Elon, king of Gash, advancing toward him, with his 14 captains to smite him, but Levi did not know it for certain. 50 And Elon with his captains approached nearer, and Levi looked back and saw that battle was given him in the rear, and Levi ran with 12 of his servants, and they went and slew Elon and his captains with the edge of the sword. Book of Jasher, chapter 38. 1 And Ehori king of Shiloh came up to assist Elon, and he approached Jacob, when Jacob drew his bow that was in his hand, and with an arrow struck Ehori, which caused his death. 2 And when Ehori king of Shiloh was dead, the 4 remaining kings fled from their station with the rest of the captains, and they endeavored to retreat, saying, "We have no more strength with the Hebrews after their having killed the 3 kings and their captains who were more powerful than we are." 3 And when the sons of Jacob saw that the remaining kings had removed from their station, they pursued them, and Jacob also came from the heap of Shechem from the place where he was standing, and they went after the kings, and they approached them with their servants. 4 And the kings and the captains with the rest of their armies, seeing that the sons of Jacob approached them, were afraid of their lives and fled till they reached the city of Chazar. 5 And the sons of Jacob pursued them to the gate of the city of Chazar, and they smote a great smiting amongst the kings and their armies, about 4,000 men, and whilst they were smiting the army of the kings, Jacob was occupied with his bow, confining himself to smiting the kings, and he slew them all. 6 And he slew Parathon king of Chazar at the gate of the city of Chazar, and he afterward smote Suzi king of Sarton, and Laban king of Bethchorin, and Shubur king of Machnaima, and he slew them all with arrows, an arrow to each of them, and they died. 7 And the sons of Jacob, seeing that all the kings were dead and that they were broken up and retreating, continued to carry on the battle with the armies of the kings opposite the gate of Chazar, and they still smote about 400 of their men. 8 and 3 men of the servants of Jacob fell in that battle, and when Judah saw that 3 of his servants had died, it grieved him greatly, and his anger burned within him against the Amorites. 9 and all the men that remained of the armies of the kings were greatly afraid of their lives, and they ran and broke the gate of the walls of the city of Chazar, and they all entered the city for safety. 10 and they concealed themselves in the midst of the city of Chazar, for the city of Chazar was very large and extensive, and when all these armies had entered the city, the sons of Jacob ran after them to the city. 11 and 4 mighty men, experienced in battle, went forth from the city and stood against the entrance of the city, with drawn swords and spears in their hands, and they placed themselves opposite the sons of Jacob, and would not suffer them to enter the city. 12 and Naphtali ran and came between them, and with his sword smote 2 of them, and cut off their heads at one stroke. 13 and he turned to the other 2, and behold they had fled, and he pursued them, overtook them, smote them, and slew them. 14 and the sons of Jacob came to the city and saw, and behold there was another wall to the city, and they sought for the gate of the wall and could not find it, and Judah sprang upon the top of the wall, and Simeon and Levi followed him, and they all 3 descended from the wall into the city. 15 and Simeon and Levi slew all the men who ran for safety into the city, and also the inhabitants of the city with their wives and little ones, they slew with the edge of the sword, and the cries of the city ascended up to heaven. 16 and Dan and Naphtali sprang upon the wall to see what caused the noise of lamentation, for the sons of Jacob felt anxious about their brothers, and they heard the inhabitants of the city speaking with weeping and supplications, saying, "Take all that we possess in the city and go away, only do not put us to death." 17 And when Judah, Simeon, and Levi had ceased smiting the inhabitants of the city, they ascended the wall and called to Dan and Naphtali, who were upon the wall, and to the rest of their brothers, and Simeon and Levi informed them of the entrance into the city, and all the sons of Jacob came to fetch the spoil. 18 And the sons of Jacob took the spoil of the city of Chazar, the flocks and herds, and the property, and they took all that could be captured, and went away that day from the city. 19 And on the next day the sons of Jacob went to Sarton, for they heard that the men of Sarton who had remained in the city were assembling to fight with them for having slain their king, and Sarton was a very high and fortified city, and it had a deep rampart surrounding the city. 20 And the pillar of the rampart was about 50 cubits, and its breadth 40 cubits, and there was no place for a man to enter the city on account of the rampart, and the sons of Jacob saw the rampart of the city, and they sought an entrance in it but could not find it. 21 For the entrance to the city was at the rear, and every man that wished to come into the city came by that road and went around the whole city, and he afterwards entered the city. 22 When the sons of Jacob, seeing they could not find the way into the city, their anger was kindled greatly, and the inhabitants of the city, seeing that the sons of Jacob were coming to them, were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Chazar. 23 And the inhabitants of the city of Sarton could not go out toward the sons of Jacob after having assembled in the city to fight against them, lest they might thereby get into the city, but when they saw that they were coming toward them, they were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Chazar. 24 So the inhabitants of Sarton speedily took away the bridge of the road of the city from its place, before the sons of Jacob came, and they brought it into the city. 25 And the sons of Jacob came and sought the way into the city, and could not find it, and the inhabitants of the city went up to the top of the wall, and saw, and behold the sons of Jacob were seeking an entrance into the city. 26 And the inhabitants of the city reproached the sons of Jacob from the top of the wall, and they cursed them, and the sons of Jacob heard the reproaches, and they were greatly incensed, and their anger burned within them. 27 And the sons of Jacob were provoked at them, and they all rose and sprang over the rampart with the force of their strength, and through their might past the 40 cubits breadth of the rampart. 28 And when they had passed the rampart, they stood under the wall of the city, and they found all the gates of the city enclosed with iron doors. 29 And the sons of Jacob came near to break open the doors of the gates of the city, and the inhabitants did not let them, for from the top of the wall they were casting stones and arrows upon them. 30 And the number of the people that were upon the wall was about 400 men, and when the sons of Jacob saw that the men of the city would not let them open the gates of the city, they sprang and ascended the top of the wall, and Judah went up first to the east part of the city. 31 And Gad and Asher went up after him to the west corner of the city, and Simeon and Levi to the north, and Dan and Reuben to the south. 32 And the men who were on the top of the wall, the inhabitants of the city, seeing that the sons of Jacob were coming up to them, they all fled from the wall, descended into the city, and concealed themselves in the midst of the city. 33 And Issachar and Naphtali that remained under the wall approached and broke the gates of the city, and kindled a fire at the gates of the city, that the iron melted. And all the sons of Jacob came into the city, they and all their men, and they fought with the inhabitants of the city of Sarton, and smote them with the edge of the sword, and no man stood up before them. 34 And about 200 men fled from the city, and they all went and hid themselves in a certain tower in the city. And Judah pursued them to the tower, and he broke down the tower, which fell upon the men, and they all died. 35 And the sons of Jacob went up the road of the roof of that tower, and they saw, and behold there was another strong and high tower at a distance in the city, and the top of it reached to heaven. And the sons of Jacob hastened and descended, and went with all their men to that tower, and found it filled with about 300 men, women, and little ones. 36 And the sons of Jacob smote a great smiting amongst those men in the tower, and they ran away and fled from them. 37 And Simeon and Levi pursued them, when 12 mighty and valiant men came out to them from the place where they had concealed themselves. 38 And those 12 men maintained a strong battle against Simeon and Levi, and Simeon and Levi could not prevail over them, and those valiant men broke the shields of Simeon and Levi, and one of them struck at Levi's head with his sword, when Levi hastily placed his hand to his head, for he was afraid of the sword, and the sword struck Levi's hand, and it wanted but little to the hand of Levi being cut off. 39 And Levi seized the sword of the valiant man in his hand, and took it forcibly from the man, and with it he struck at the head of the powerful man, and he severed his head. 40 And 11 men approached to fight with Levi, for they saw that one of them was killed, and the sons of Jacob fought, but the sons of Jacob could not prevail over them, for those men were very powerful. 41 And the sons of Jacob, seeing that they could not prevail over them, Simeon gave a loud and tremendous shriek, and the 11 powerful men were stunned at the voice of Simeon's shrieking. 42 And Judah at a distance knew the voice of Simeon shouting, and Naphtali and Judah ran with their shields to Simeon and Levi, and found them fighting with those powerful men, unable to prevail over them as their shields were broken. 43 And Naphtali saw that the shields of Simeon and Levi were broken, and he took 2 shields from his servants and brought them to Simeon and Levi. 44 And Simeon, Levi and Judah on that day fought all 3 against the 11 mighty men until the time of sunset, but they could not prevail over them. 45 And this was told unto Jacob, and he was sorely grieved, and he prayed unto the Lord, and he and Naphtali his son went against these mighty men. 46 And Jacob approached and drew his bow, and came nigh unto the mighty men, and slew 3 of their men with the bow, and the remaining 8 turned back, and behold, the war waged against them in the front and rear, and they were greatly afraid of their lives, and could not stand before the sons of Jacob, and they fled from before them. 47 And in their flight they met Dan and Asher coming toward them, and they suddenly fell upon them, and fought with them, and slew 2 of them, and Judah and his brothers pursued them, and smote the remainder of them, and slew them. 48 And all the sons of Jacob returned and walked about the city, searching if they could find any men, and they found about 20 young men in a cave in the city, and Gad and Asher smote them all, and Dan and Naphtali lighted upon the rest of the men who had fled and escaped from the second tower, and they smote them all. 49 And the sons of Jacob smote all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton, but the women and little ones they left in the city and did not slay them. 50 And all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton were powerful men, one of them would pursue 1,000, and 2 of them would not flee from 10,000 of the rest of men. 51 And the sons of Jacob slew all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton with the edge of the sword, that no man stood up against them, and they left the women in the city. 52 And the sons of Jacob took all the spoil of the city, and captured what they desired, and they took flocks and herds and property from the city, and the sons of Jacob did unto Sarton and its inhabitants as they had done to Chazar and its inhabitants, and they turned and went away.